Cards that many may see as cardboard irrelevant, but are still actually popular. Indie cards that may seem sought after and popular, but are they really? An interesting resurgence in Hulk Hogan cards. That's right, I said resurgence and Hulk Hogan in the same sentence. And modern one-of-one cards are still top of the pyramid when it comes to wrestling cards. This is the Wrestling Card Market Watch for September 2022. What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Thanks for stopping by. If this is your first time checking out the channel, thank you for your time. And I'd love if you'd hit that subscribe button and give me a like if you're enjoying this video so far, even though we're only a few seconds into it. Each month, I do one of these videos looking back at interesting sales and interesting numbers from the world of wrestling cards. And real quick, before we jump into the numbers from September and the sales and cards we're going to talk about, when this video is over, make sure to check the links in the show notes to all the ways that you can help show your support for all the content I'm putting out in the podcast, these videos, and anything else that's in there that I'm up to, you can find down there. 2016 Topps Heritage Nasty Boys Dual Auto out of 11, $149.99. The Nasty Boys, they were complete staples of professional wrestling through the 90s. Everyone knew them. They were in WWE, that's at the time. Then they were in WCW. But let's take a second and examine their cards. Do they actually have a collector base? Now, of course, I've said it before, every talent in wrestling cards or sports cards or whatever avenue of the hobby you're looking at, they all have a collector base to some extent. But I'll be completely honest, they don't strike me really as a name or talent that would have a huge collector base, specifically enough to bring to light a card that somebody's paying $150. $150 for a Nasty Boys card? Why? Well, let's look into this card specifically. First off, it's a dual autograph, which dual autographs for tag teams is always a big bonus. They always sell for more than, say, if this was, individual cards from the Nasty Boys and they had autographs separately. Again, any tag team or faction, the dual, triple, quadruple autos, they always sell better. But a few other characteristics we need to look at. Let's first start with the sticker autographs. The wrestling card community touts and clamors, oh, we want on-card autos. We're sick of sticker autos. That's been the thing for a while, but even more so with the more modern Panini releases, specifically Prism and Select, doing a lot of sticker autos. But again, this card, Nasty Boys, selling for $150 for sticker autos, it begs the question, do we need to continue to complain about sticker autos, or has the market spoken that autographs are autographs? I don't know, it's just something to think about as we see sales from these sticker autographs and the continued popularity in autographs in general within wrestling cards. Next interesting thing is this is a heritage product, which generally heritage is lower on the totem pole of value within the wrestling card space. And lastly, the numbering system. Number to 11, very random, but it's a pretty low number. As we've seen with Prism Golds, those are numbered out of 10. Or Topps Chrome Black refractors, numbered out of 10. So this one's numbered out of 11, so it's pretty rare. And that may be a little bit of the driving force behind this sale. Or it could have just taken a couple of diehard Nasty Boys fans or newer people getting into the hobby. They're like, hey, I remember the Nasty Boys. They see this card and they start going after it. I'm not sure. But regardless, the point I want to drive home with this card is that I absolutely love seeing names that, as I've said before, are not the Hulk Hogans, not the Rocks, that are selling for quite a bit of money. And for this kind of a card selling for over $100, that's really got me on a positive note as far as where we're going within wrestling cards. 2020 Darby Allin Limitless cards. Okay, so let's talk some indie cards. And more so about the popularity or perceived popularity and the community around them, and not as much about this specific card, but we will talk about this specific sale and how that ties things together. There are those that love indie cards, and there are those that despise indie cards. Some of these indie cards are released as, I would say, professional. They'll be sold in a complete set with packaging, they'll be released in packs, and then some are just released as one-offs. The thing is, many traditional wrestling card collectors, they go by this Beckett definition of pack-pulled, mass-produced, mass-distributed, and a lot of these collectors don't see indie cards as legitimate wrestling cards. They'll just say, oh, these are bootlegged, or these are homemade in someone's garage on their computer. And I'm not here to say what's right or wrong, but what I do want to discuss is the popularity and community surrounding them. I've heard many people within wrestling cards compare indie cards to the 82-83 All-Stars. And this is from a talent and production and distribution style. Many say you should approach indie cards like some veteran collectors approach the All-Stars, because a lot of times the indie cards, similar to the All-Stars cards, are cards of a talent before they actually blew up. or before you started seeing them on TV on a regular basis. Guys like Darby Allin, MJF, and much more. But I gotta say, these indie cards have generated a die-hard cult following around them. A community that seems to care more about the actual wrestling that's represented in the card, and then in turn relates that back to the card and connects with it more. As opposed to maybe the, hobby mainstream of WWE and Panini and going after whatever's the highest selling card or the top names and the mainstream talking points that go along with wrestling cards. So all that being said, I told you I was going to tie this together. Let's look back at this Darby Allin card. And more importantly, we've got 3 of them here and the sales represented. First question I ask, is this just typical eBay shenanigans with shill bidding or some other mumbo jumbo? Are these unpaid items? Is that then reflecting the current hobby market or economic state that we're in? Are these just overhyped cards that really aren't as popular and are not fetching the money and popularity that many claim that they are? I think it's a little bit of everything, actually, that I just spoke about. As far as the shill bidding and unpaid items, again, if I talk about my eBay store, quick plug, check the links in the show notes if you want to check out what I've got for sale, but I've been selling on eBay for so long that shill bidding, unpaid items, all that shady hanky-panky going on eBay. It's par for the course. It's been going on for years. Now, as far as the popularity and the rarity, a lot of these cards truly are rare. But as far as the popularity, I honestly think a lot of it has just been propped up by the community around it. And that's not to say that's a bad thing. Each segment of cards has specific communities around it. Wrestling All-Stars, 2014, Topps Chrome, gold refractors I talked about. And there are a lot of different segments out there that have these communities built around it. And, if you don't have the communities around the cards that are, some may say propping up the card, but just enjoying it and talking about it on social media or podcasts or whatever, if we don't have those communities, then the word about these cards doesn't get out. So I'm not saying that the community around indie cards is necessarily pumping and dumping these. I'm just saying that I think it is a little bit more of a loud minority, and the mainstream hobby just hasn't picked up on that yet. Why? I'm not sure. And when I say picked up on that, I mean not like they've picked up on a pump and dump or anything like that, but like if you're a Darby Allin fan and you're buying the AEW Upper Deck cards, why are you not buying these? They came before it. And maybe it's the questions that I've kind of talked about here. Maybe some of the people see Upper Deck as the official wrestling product. They don't want these other things. Again, not sure, just kind of thinking out loud here and wondering why this specific sale, or these sales I should say, kind of went the way they did. But let's face it, they just don't have the demand that WWE Prism or WWE Select or now Impeccable coming out. Like, they just don't have that demand. And I'll even throw the Upper Deck in there. I mentioned that Upper Deck seems to have more of a demand than the indie cards. But that being said, I really think things can change. Again, I talk about community, the more people talking about specific cards, the more it gets out into the public, and the more people want those cards, whether it's from a investment, monetary standpoint, or whether they're a super collector and, oh, I didn't know that card exists, I've got to go get it. And again, if you want a prime example of this, look at the Wrestling All-Stars. Those cards were once deemed ignorant or stupid by the sports card world, considered junk by many, and now look at them. Again, proof that all it takes is fandom and community to get cards or sets into the mindset of the modern collector, and oh, I've got to have that. 1981 Marusho Hulk Hogan SGC 8, $3,999. However, a best offer of $2,500 was accepted. From an image perspective, this may be one of the coolest Hulk Hogan cards ever. I mean, come on, look at that cape. But the real reason that I want to talk about this card is that we're starting to see, or at least I am, this interesting resurgence in Hulk Hogan cards. And you may be thinking, Zhan, come on. Hulk Hogan, one of the biggest names in wrestling of all time, and one of the driving forces of the wrestling card market and popularity. How can you say resurgence? Well, here's what I mean. For the longest time, when you hear people talking about Hulk Hogan cards or going after Hulk Hogan cards or flexing their Hulk Hogan cards, it's the same things all the time. 82 All-Stars, 85 Topps, and occasionally you might see one of those WCW autograph cards. But now it seems like a lot of people, and specifically more of the vintage collectors, are starting to branch out. And this is very exciting. We're starting to see a lot more people show some love and the popularity gaining in some of these more rare, obscure Hulk Hogan cards that you just don't see every day. Japanese releases, magazine releases, of course, PMGs, Chrome, autographs. I think this is really fantastic for a few different reasons. First being that it gives Hulk Hogan and also vintage collectors a new breath of life, so to speak, within the hobby. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm saying it right now. I am extremely tired of seeing the same crap over and over again. I don't care what segment of the hobby you're in. If you're just posting the Michael Jordan rookie over and over and over and over again, it gets old. Wrestling All-Stars over and over and over, it gets old. Now, I understand the community and the fandom around it. Wrestling All-Stars is my favorite set, but I'll say it. I've said it before, I'll say it again here. It just gets old seeing the same things over and over. So when you see a lot of these newer Hulk Hogan cards come out, while it may not necessarily spur me to go out and buy them, I love listening to the stories and seeing new cards I haven't seen and learning about them, learning about the history, and why specific people are now starting to go after those cards. And it may just not be me. It may be that talking about these cards, like I said with the indie cards before, it brings new light to different segments of the wrestling card hobby that maybe the general public getting into wrestling cards didn't know about. This also brings in non-wrestling collectors. A lot of people from sports cards or non-sports, they see some of these cards, it strikes with them connection for some reason. They go, oh, I used to love watching wrestling when I was a kid. Hulk Hogan was my favorite. I've got to have this. And whether that's for nostalgia or an investment perspective, it's just the more we talk about these things, the more people it's going to bring in. And giving people a variety of things to collect. So again, not only is this maybe one of the coolest Hulk Hogan cards ever produced from an image perspective, but when you kind of dig into the weeds, so to speak, on this card, it may in fact be a key factor to kind of open the floodgates for other wrestling cards to go deep diving into all of these different segments of wrestling cards that we have, instead of just, buying what everybody else is showing off or what they think they need to buy. And of course, to get more people into wrestling cards, again, I say it all the time, it's why I started this channel, the podcast, any content I'm putting out, is to just get the information out there to make a light bulb go off in a wrestling card fan or a wrestling fan or sports card fan. Light bulb goes off, they start coming into the hobby, and we all just have a great time. 2022 WWE Select Braun Breaker Premier Level Black 1 of 1, $4,250. However, a best offer of $2,000 was accepted. I've talked a lot on this channel and on previous podcasts, both the Wrestling with Cards podcast and the Worlds Collide podcast. Again, you can check those out wherever you get your podcasts, or you can check the links in the show notes. But my opinion on these hasn't changed. I still think for more of the modern products, they're going to stand the test of time and value. Again, if you want more on my opinions, just check out a lot of the videos in the archives or the podcast archives. But let's talk about this card and why I think the formula of this card may in fact be the blueprint for how to prospect in wrestling. So first off, Braun Breaker seems to be one of the talent in the Panini releases that's had a great selection of rookie cards. It seems like his popularity just continues to gain both monetarily and just generally popularity, and he's backing it up in the ring. And that's not something we can say about a lot of the Panini rookie cards, or even if you want to take it back to Topps Chrome. We get the, you buy the case, you buy into the breaks, you buy lots, whatever it is. And I see many people, myself included, getting these rookie cards and like, who is this guy? Like, we've never heard of him. You definitely cannot say that about Braun Breaker. So again, let's talk about the blueprint for prospecting and why I think Braun Breaker is like the prototype, because again, he has proven that he's got the tendencies of a superstar. He's on TV. He can talk on the mic a little bit, maybe not the best, but not bad, right? Great selection of products within rookie cards. If you want high-end, if you want autographs, if you want parallels, he's got a lot of good selections within the Panini products. He's got the family pedigree as being the son of Rick Steiner, and seems like a legitimate, tough wrestler type. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and prospect on Braun Breaker necessarily. I'm just using him as an example and checking all the boxes of the talking points of what I think are good aspects if you're trying to prospect in wrestling cards. Don't just go out there and buy the rookie card because it's the rookie card. You got to make sure, are they on the screen to begin with? Is the mainstream seeing this talent? How are they on the mic? What's their character like? Does it appeal to the broad masses of wrestling? Just those sorts of things to keep in mind instead of just going out and buying rookie cards. 2022 WWE Prism Black 1 of 1 Sasha Banks, $10,000. However, a best offer of $6,000 was accepted. Wow, okay, $6,000 for a talent of a wrestling card that's not actually on TV or in the WWE. And it's not even a rookie card. Ooh. Some may scoff at this, but let's talk about it. First off, Sasha has always been on the forefront of the women's revolution, and in some people's minds, she is an all-time great. Not to mention her star power and popularity on Star Wars Mandalorian, which appeals to both segments, wrestling and non-sport entertainment Star Wars. Great crossover star, crossover card, potentially. Combined all that with a great image on this card, in my opinion, it being a 1 of 1 and the Prism brand name, you've got a knockout winning card here. But my big takeaway from this, again, somebody that's not currently wrestling but does appeal to a wider audience, kind of like The Rock, is kind of the just longevity of wrestling cards and where I see them going. And this is a little bit more in relation to the non-sports segment. Most people, again, traditionally in the sports card world, kind of associate value of a card and the popularity of a card with their on-screen or on-field performance. And how the market reacts to that. Do they win a championship? Did they get traded to a new team? Does that mean that that card goes up or down? And while we are seeing more of that with wrestling cards, it doesn't exactly work that way. Star Wars, Pokemon, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things. All of these have diehard fan bases. They have collectible products out there. And yeah, I could understand if something new comes out, it might drive a little bit of the older stuff. But all of that stuff is not necessarily driven by what's going on the screen or performance base. And then in turn, contrary to what a lot of the sports card collectors think, a lot of these non-sport cards go for a pretty decent chunk of change. In fact, I would argue that some of the non-sport currently is more valuable and safe long-term than a lot of the more modern sports that you've seen pumped up that has now come crashing down. And again, I don't know why a lot of the hobby talking heads, all they want to talk about is that big name sports typical stuff, and they just don't really touch on a lot of these other segments of the hobby that actually have a pretty big fan following, collecting fan base, and some money behind it. I guess it's just not cool in the world of collectibles to not like anything that's not baseball, basketball, football. Regardless, I just feel like wrestling cards, the bigger we grow this pie, I always say that, the more people that get into wrestling cards, the more longevity it has, and it's really talent. It's independent of the talent. Again, wrestling cards are driven by characters and nostalgia. Two things that never, ever go away when it comes to a person or a memory or a time. It doesn't matter whether that talent is on your screen or if they are active, if they're alive, or they're deceased. Trading cards really trigger that nostalgia and those memories with people, whether it's a base card, whether it's a Sasha Banks 1 of 1. And that's why I truly feel like wrestling cards, I don't want to use the to the moon because we're kind of going up and right from a value perspective, but I just think from a longevity perspective, you know, you get into wrestling cards, again, nostalgia and driven by characters. We had Bray Wyatt return recently, and there are a lot of diehard Bray Wyatt or Fiend collectors out there. And maybe his return is a time for somebody and they associate it with the card. It's not going to matter 20 years down the road if he's still wrestling because they're going to look at that card, they're going to remember what happened on screen that specific day with that character. And while we do see this in sports cards, I'm just making the comparison that in wrestling and non-sports, I just think the longevity and the value, while it may not get the hobby headlines, while it may not be more expensive than sports cards, I just think it's going to be a safer hold. You're not going to see a lot of that stuff come crashing down, and it's really going to resonate more with, you know, the collectors and the communities than the latest rookie that just got drafted. Wrestling cards are timeless. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like, hit that like button. Hit subscribe, it's free, you're already here, it doesn't cost anything. Spread the word about this channel, tell a friend, tell a relative, tell a wrestling fan, I guess you can tell a sports card fan, let's get more of them in here. Let's get more people into the greatest niche on God's green earth of the hobby. And before you get out of here, make sure to check the links in the show notes to all the ways you can help show your support for my content. Patreon page, eBay page, social media links, links to the podcast, links to buy me a coffee if you want. There's all kinds of stuff down there, and I greatly appreciate anything you can contribute to help these videos going. And until next time, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. I'll see you there.